Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to MTG Traders. My name is Taryn, and this is Simic Merfolk 2.0. So Rivals of Ixalan is out, and a ton of great Merfolk cards have been added to the Merfolk deck list, and let's go over them right here. But of course, before we get into it, make sure to like the video if you like the video and subscribe to the channel. Helps us know you care and helps keep these videos rolling. But without further ado, let's get into the one-drop slot. We have 4 of Simic Speaker, a 1/1 for 1 Merfolk Shaman. Simic Speaker gets +1/+1 as long as you control another Merfolk or an island. So this is a great 2/2 on turn 2 attacking in if we have an island or another Merfolk to play out. While Simic Speaker is fantastic at a 1-drop slot, it does kind of lose value after turn 3, but that's perfectly okay with us because we do have a lot of other pump cards in the deck that help Merfolk out. Moving on here, we have 4 of Merfolk Branchwalker, a 2-mana 2/1 Merfolk Scout, and when Merfolk Branchwalker enters the battlefield, it explores. So this has the possibility of being a 3/2 or a 4/2 or 5/2 thanks to other cards in the deck as well. Merfolk Branchwalker is basically a great way for us to get into mana if we don't have a lot of it, or just to get a 3/2 out on the battlefield for us on turn 2. You'll see kind of throughout the entire Merfolk list here that we're going to be abusing the Explore mechanic quite a bit. Next up here we have our first Lord. This is Merfolk Mistbinder, a 2-mana 2/2 Merfolk Shaman. Other Merfolk you control get +1/+1. Merfolk Mistbinder is a fantastic inclusion for us from Rivals of Ixalan, and it's awesome. It's like the best we could hope for a Lord in the actual Rivals of Ixalan. My only concern, of course, is that it's the 2 different types of mana, but we do have Unclaimed Territory in the deck and Botanical Sanctum. We'll talk about those later in a minute, but those kind of help to get a turn 2 Mistbinder out on the battlefield if you need to, or probably a 3 or 4 turn 3 or 4 for the Mistbinder. One of the things is from the Merfolk strategy is we want to go wide, then play Mistbinder as if it's an enchantment, and then swing out. The reason we want to do this is because the Mistbinder can be removed easily, and we really want to make sure our actual power is going through as quickly as we possibly can get it through. Moving on here to another technical Lord for us, we have Metallic Mimic, a 2-mana 2/1 artifact creature shapeshifter. This is one of the cards from 8th Revolt here. As Metallic Mimic enters the battlefield, choose a creature type. Metallic Mimic is a chosen type in addition to its other types, and each other creature you control of the chosen type enters the battlefield with an additional +1/+1 counter on it. So this is a great way for our Branchwalker to come in with a +1/+1 counter on it and also get us a land. So it's still a 3/2 that also gets us a land thanks to the Explore mechanic, which is awesome. The only downside, of course, to Metallic Mimic is that it's not a Merfolk in our hand. So we have cards like the next card here, like Silvergill Adept, that actually need a Merfolk in our hand for it to come out on turn 2 if you want to do that. And Metallic Mimic, sadly, is not a Merfolk in our hand, which is awful. So it can definitely spell for some like awkward moments in our opening hands here, but Metallic Mimic is still a great card for us on turn 2. It can be basically just a removal target for our opponent since they do not like this card at all if they're in red and black. But for the most part, if it does stick for at least a turn or 2, it gives us some actual great value. Moving on here, of course, to the Silvergill Adept, a 2-mana 2/1 Merfolk Wizard. As an additional cost to Silvergill Adept, reveal a Merfolk card from your hand or pay 3 colorless. We do not want to pay 3 colorless. We want to just reveal a Merfolk from our hand. When it enters the battlefield, we draw a card. Since we only have 19 land in this entire deck, the card draw advantage here is super real and really helps us kind of get into a lot of advantage as far as either mana or creatures on the battlefield as quickly as possible. While the Adept may not be a powerhouse on the battlefield itself, it really does help us get into actual value as quickly as possible and really helps us kind of build out our board state as quickly as possible. So if you can't tell, I'm saying as quickly as possible because this card is all about speed. Moving on here, we have the 3-mana slot. This is Jadelight Ranger, a 4 of here, a 3-mana 2/1 Merfolk Scout. When Jadelight Ranger enters the battlefield, it explores, then it explores again. With Metallic Mimic on the battlefield, this card is a monster powerhouse coming in, being able to go toe-to-toe even against dinosaur decks very quickly. One of the best things also is this card can actually get around a Fatal Push, which is probably the one card right now that can really shut down this entire deck list, except for the 3-mana slot. They have to get the Revolt trigger going off. But otherwise, Jadelight Ranger here is amazing for us, either getting us into mana or getting us a 4/3 on turn 3. And if we have Metallic Mimic, it could be a 5/4 on turn 3, which is stupid. And of course, moving on here to the last of our creatures here, 27 in total, we have 3 Swift Warden. This is a 3-mana 3/3 with Flash, and when Swift Warden enters the battlefield, target Merfolk you control gains Hexproof until end of turn. So this is a great card for us to kind of like combat against removal on turn 3 or turn 4. A great way to make sure our Mistbinder stays alive, a great way for our Metallic Mimic to stay alive, especially if we want to have a wide board state against a smaller board state or against a more tempo-based strategy, because that's kind of what this deck is all about, being tempo, gaining the advantage, especially if we have a Metallic Mimic on the battlefield, being able to protect our Metallic Mimic and create a 4/4 thanks to the Mimic's ability giving a +1/+1 counter on the Swift Warden. It's just value Town City all around. I really love Swift Warden. I kind of wanted to put a 4 of here and like cut one of the Bratchwalkers, but I do think that the early game Explorer mechanic is super crucial for us to make sure that we can actually get as many creatures out as possible. So that's why it's only a 3 of here. So that's all the creatures. Let's move on to spells here. We have 4 of Blossoming Defense, a 1-mana instant. Target creature gets +2/+2 and gains hexproof until end of turn. Blossoming Defense has been a premier piece of protection for us in the standard format for a couple months now, and it's going to continue to be. Blossoming Defense is super good. We also have Dive Down, not in the deck, but in the format that gives, +0/+3 and hexproof, but Blossoming Defense is a really great way to kind of trade if we need to against a dinosaur or a larger creature. And of course, since it does give hexproof, it does protect all of our Merfolk, or a particular Merfolk actually, against any kind of removal or maybe even board wipe. It can make them a little bit more powerful to kind of survive an hour of devastation. Next up here for us, we have a 3 of Enter the Unknown, a new Rivals of Ixalan card, a 1-mana sorcery. Target creature you control explores, then you may play an additional land this turn. Enter the Unknown is very interesting for me, and a like kind of like test pick that I put in this deck to play around with, and I really like it, especially if we have a turn 1 Cumina Speaker. So let's say turn 1 Cumina Speaker, turn 2 have a land, or Enter the Unknown and then play 2 lands and then get out another Merfolk. I think Enter the Unknown is super powerful and gives us a lot of great ways to kind of make sure we can pump up our board state, as well as like getting into more card advantage. While Enter the Unknown is not technically like Attune with Aether, where it just gives us a land, it has basically a little more flexibility in making our board state larger, as well as giving us more options to play out our cards in our hand. Again, the reason I've picked this basically over Attune is because it gives us that flexibility. Moving on here, we have 4 River Herald's Boon. This is a super interesting card for us, and basically replacing Deeproot Waters from my initial build of the deck, because Deeproot Waters, while it's very good after turn 3, on turn 3 it's such a crucial moment in the match for us in Standard, and so many decks right now are so quick that I feel like that card comes in and then like I just feel like I immediately die. I feel like if I don't have a turn 3 creature or a turn 3 like multiple creatures or something on the battlefield to protect myself, then I'm just dead. River Herald's Boon helps us do that. It gets our creatures larger. It helps us kind of be able to block more creatures more effectively, and it kind of just gives us more value. And that's kind of what I really want from a Merfolk strategy. Of course, if you don't know, River Herald's Boon is a 2-mana instant. Put a +1/+1 counter on target creature and a +1/+1 counter on up to 1 target Merfolk. The best thing about this card is that it can choose the same creature twice. So if it's like a Cumina Speaker, it immediately becomes a 4/4 if that's the only thing we have on the battlefield. And sometimes if you're playing up against control, that's exactly what you want to do. Turn 1 Cumina Speaker, turn 2 River Herald's Boon, get in for 4 points of damage. Because more often than not, a turn 2 for a control deck will either have a Search for Azcanta, or if we're on the play, we're just getting in for 4 points of damage straight up. Very few decks main board Spell Pierce right now in game 1, so we do have an advantage in power there. Moving on to another spell here, we have River's Rebuke, a 6-mana sorcery, just a 1-of here in the main board. Return all non-land permanents target player controls to their owner's hand. So one of the reasons this is a 1-of in the deck is because we have the 1-of matches against either vampires or dinosaurs, where they go either really wide or really large, and we really need to get through them for that extra like life-ending points of damage. There's a lot of situations online where I've been in matches where I just need like an extra 10 points of damage. I have 12 points of damage on the battlefield. I get into my 6th land, and as soon as I hit it, I hit River's Herald's Boon. They don't have any way to counter it or negate it, and then it just bounces their entire board, and then we win. Again, River Herald's Boon is all about being tempo-oriented and moving forward, and this card is ridiculously powerful for us because the way our deck is built around basically just going wide. And that's why this card is basically a blowout. Against another go wide strategy or a go big strategy. The last 2 cards in the deck besides lands here is actually 2 Hadana's Climb. This is a 3-mana legendary enchantment. At the beginning of a combat on your turn, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature you control. Then if that creature has 3 or more +1/+1 counters on it, transform Hadana's Climb. This is a great way to go wide and big at the same time. Really helps us out as far as making sure our creatures can kind of survive some removal. Shock and Lightning Strike are going to be the big pieces here that we really want to worry about in the game 1 matchup. Now, if we're up against the energy strategy, obviously Harness Lightning is going to be a big deal as well. I would basically consider Harness Lightning myself to be basically a 2-mana removal spell, just flat out in red if they're in the energy program. But making sure you can actually kind of make your board state a little bit larger, able to kind of resist a Sweltering Suns, able to resist a Lightning Strike or a Shock, or maybe even resist against a Hour Devastation with that third counter on a particular creature. Now keep in mind also, if the Jadelight Ranger has 3 counters on it thanks to Metallic Mimic and 2 Explore like triggers, as well as like, you know, River Herald's Boon or whatever else, you can still put a +1/+1 counter on it too, which really helps us to kind of like combat against dinosaurs too, that go big strategy. But that does of course mean that Hadana's Climb does flip and turns into Winged Temple of Araska. This is a legendary land that adds mana of any color to our mana pool, and we can pay 3, tap it, target creature you control gains flying and gets +X/+X until end of turn, where X is its power. Basically, when Winged Temple of Araska is on the field, it's the Maya marker to be like, okay, well, we're actually going to like close out the match now, because a 6/6 can get in for 12 points of damage in the air, and sometimes that's just too much for our opponents to deal with, and they're actually just going to die outright. Being able to have a 5/4 or 6/5 of a Jadelight Ranger on the battlefield, and being able to get up for 12/11 or something like that ridiculous, is enough to basically just get us the GG. And of course, this also adds to our mana pool, which is great for us if we need a River's Rebuke in the mid to late game. But that is it for all the cards in the deck. Let's move on to lands here. We have, of course, 4 Botanical Sanctum. It's a dual land for us. It's a fast land coming in for us, giving us green or blue. Then we, of course, we have 4 Unclaimed Territory. This card is a great card for us as well as a terrible card, because sometimes it's fantastic if we have a lot of creatures in our hand. Sometimes it's terrible if we need a lot of like actual mana for our spells. But Unclaimed Territory, to me, I feel like is a 4/of in this deck just because of the 27 creatures we have in the main board. And the rest of the land here is just 6 forest and 5 islands. So there's only 19 land in total in these first 60. So of course, game 1 game plan is to be very tempo focused, play Community Speaker, get out a Merfolk Branchwalker, get out a Metallic Mimic, start getting the Silver Gear Adept, like, you know, drawing advantage, just going super wide and getting in as much damage as quickly as possible until our opponent is dead. But what can we do in the game 2 situation here? There is a lot of removal in the format, and we really need to deal with it. And there's also a lot of really large creature threats that we just can't deal with sometimes super early in the match. What can we do? Let's go to the sideboard here. First up, against the Godfrey's Gift strategy, we have a 1/of Scavenger Grounds. I thought of putting a 2/of here in the actual sideboard, but I think a 1/of here is just fine. Scavenger Grounds, of course, adds colors to our mana pool, and we can pay 2, tap it, sack a desert, exile our cards from all graveyards. Because we have no graveyard interaction ourselves, this really isn't going to hurt us at all, but it is going to hurt a Embalm, Eternalized, or Godfrey's Gift strategy, and that is exactly what we needed to do. Moving on here, we have 2 Spell Pierce. A lot of turn 2 removal is really super real right now in the format. Fatal Push, Harness Lightning, Lightning Strike, things like that. Spell Pierce is here to help protect our creatures in the early game and make sure that our opponent doesn't get the drop on us with that 1-to-1 ratio. Not a lot of people play Spell Pierce in game 1, so we really can't do a Spell Pierce versus Spell Pierce matchup here, but it is also a great way to shut down and approach the Second Sun strategy if our opponent is trying to go out with that too. Moving on here, we have 3 Essence Scatter. There are a lot of basic like creature-based strategies in Standard at the moment. We have vampires coming up now. Dinosaurs is a real thing for sure, and pirates as well as other Merfolk strategies against the mirror match. Essence Scatter is here to be a 2-mana counter target creature spell, simple, straight to the point, and it gets the job done. Next up here, we have 3 Naturalize, a card that's in Rivals of Ixalan. This is actually the Khan's art, but Naturalize is in Rivals of Ixalan. It's a 2-mana instant, destroy target artifact or enchantment. I put 3 of it in here because I really like the flexibility of this card against any kind of like curse deck or any like Search for Ascanta deck, anything against artifacts as well. So if we're up against a Godfrey's Gift strategy, this card is most likely coming in, as well as against any kind of vehicles or maybe even energy-based strategy. Depending on what they're playing, Naturalize might be coming in as well. Moving on here, we have 3 Negates. Of course, Negate is going to be coming in against a heavy creature-based removal strategy or a more control-heavy strategy. Negate's going to just kind of shut down those big blowout cards like Search for Ascanta in the early game. Fumigate, and of course, Settle the Wreckage. Those are the basic 2 cards that kind of actually hurt us quite a bit, as well as, of course, Hour of Devastation, Sweltering Suns, things like that. Next up, we have 2 Supreme Will, another counter magic for us, but it does give us flexibility, and then it can counter a spell, or we can actually search top 4 cards of our library and add one of them to our hand, then put the rest on the bottom of our library in any order. It's a great way to get some mana, great way to get either a Mistbinder or another Jadelight Ranger to help us kind of go wide or build out our mana base. But if not, in the mid to late game, we just have a straight up counter spell sometimes against a like heavy on curve deck. And the last card in the sideboard here is a 1/of another one, River's Rebuke. In game 1, if we're going up against a like token based strategy like the vampire strategy, we really need a way to kind of bounce their entire board state. Bringing in a second River's Rebuke is a very good idea, and it's right here in the sideboard for us if we need it. But that is the full deck list, guys. On the full 75 here, let's go to the full layout. On MTG Traders, coming to about 109 tickets, which isn't too bad for a brand new deck. Of course, the money cards are Jadelight Ranger, Metallic Mimic, and of course Botanical Sanctum. Those are are going to be the 3 top cards. Merfolk Mistminer is actually coming to about 12 tickets as well, with the full 4 of, so that's kind of interesting. But yeah, I mean, the obvious cards, of course, Daylight Ranger, Botanical Sanctum, and Metallic Mimic. And in paper, the cost is coming to about 145, which again, isn't too bad for a standard deck. But that is the full 75, guys. Let me know what you think. Do you like it? Do you hate it? I know a lot of people are going to be upset that it didn't have Deep-Root Waters in the deck, but to me, it was just it really just hurt to play that card on turn 3 because it's such a crucial turn for us in standard right now because of how fast the meta is. And I just feel like it's not good enough. Even though it does give us sequential turns of 1/1 hexproof creatures, it really hurts us on the curve. I know that's going to be a big point of contention for a lot of people, and I will probably rebuild this deck later in a different way and include Deep-Root Waters just to kind of show you guys what that would be. But I do think this particular build is all about getting value, getting a lot of creatures out as quickly as possible, and then just overwhelming our opponent with Riverheld's boons, Metallic Mimic +1/+1 counters, and even Hadana's Climb blowout abilities. But that does it for this video today, guys. I love you guys, and I will see you in the test drive or in the next video. Peace.